Welcome to Heartfelt Revenge Stories. The banquet hall at the Royal Windsor smelled like expensive wine and my mother's perfume, the same floral blend she had worn every single day of my life, the one that was supposed to smell like sophistication and mostly just smelled like expectation. I sat at the far corner of the long family dinner table, the corner I had claimed for myself over years of practice, the seat with the best exit angle and the least visibility. I had learned a long time ago that the safest place at a family dinner was slightly out of frame. My sister Elena was holding court at the center of the table, exactly where she always was, exactly where our parents had always positioned her. Her diamond engagement ring caught the candlelight every time she moved her hands, which was constantly, because Elena talked with her whole body when she was performing, and she was always performing at family dinners. Our parents sat on either side of her like matching bookends, my father's hand resting on the back of her chair with the proprietary ease of a man presenting his finest achievement. "Tell them about the venue, darling," my mother said, and she was practically humming with pride. Elena's smile was the kind that photographs beautifully. The Hartwell Grand. Daniel's father secured the main ballroom. "It is going to be absolutely extraordinary." Daniel Park, my father announced to the full table of aunts and uncles and cousins who had gathered for this particular performance. Senior partner at Hartley & Associates, one of the most respected law firms in the city. His father sits on the board of 4 major financial institutions. I moved a piece of salmon around my plate and made myself a little smaller, which I was very good at by then. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you are listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. My name is Lauren Reeves. I am 28 years old and I am an aerospace engineer. I design navigation systems for communication satellites. I am currently the youngest senior systems architect at my company, leading a project that will provide broadband internet to over 200 remote and northern communities across the country. At family dinners, I am the one at the corner of the table trying not to draw attention. "So, Lauren," my Aunt Patricia said, leaning across the table with that specific smile that means the question is not actually a question. "What is it you do again? I always forget." The table went quiet in that particular practice way that told me everyone already knew the answer, and was waiting to see how I would deliver it. "I am an aerospace engineer," I said. "I work on satellite navigation systems." My father made a sound in his throat, a small dismissive sound barely audible, but I had been hearing it my entire life and I knew exactly what it contained. "She works in some industrial facility out in the business park," he said to the table. "Not exactly dinner conversation, is it, Dad?" "I design navigation systems for communication satellites. I am currently leading the development team for a national connectivity project." He turned back to the table with the patient expression of a man being interrupted. "Always so sensitive," he said. "Can't just have a normal conversation without turning it into a resume." My mother reached across to squeeze Elena's hand. "At least one of our girls understands what really matters." Elena worked so hard to build the right connections to present herself properly. That is what opens doors in this world. My cousin Bradley leaned in with the easy grin of someone who has never once wondered whether he was welcome in a room. "Maybe you will meet a nice engineer at your facility, Lauren. Someone on your level." The table laughed. I kept my face very still and said nothing. I had 28 years of practice keeping my face very still. "Actually," I said, after the laughter faded just enough, "I was recently promoted to senior systems architect. I am the youngest person in the company to hold that title." "That is wonderful, sweetheart," my mother said, her voice bright and completely empty, the way a room sounds when all the furniture has been removed. "Now, Elena, show everyone the wedding invitations. They just arrived yesterday." Glossy cream cardstock with embossed gold lettering passed around the table to a chorus of appreciative sounds. I did not reach for one. I already understood, without being told directly, that I was not entirely expected to need one. Later, after the dinner plates were cleared and people were nursing coffee and dessert, Elena pulled me into the hotel corridor. Her heels clicked against the marble like small controlled detonations. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and careful. "About the wedding." She would not look directly at me, which I had learned over 28 years meant she was about to say something she already knew was wrong. "Daniel's family is very traditional," she said. "Very conscious of image. Very particular about how things appear. His parents are hosting the rehearsal dinner at Olio next week. Everyone who matters will be there. business associates, influential people, his entire extended family. I waited. Elena twisted her engagement ring in a slow circle. The thing is, I think it might be better if you did not attend the wedding or the rehearsal dinner. You could say you have a work commitment which honestly would not even be alive for you. I will make sure you get photographs. I looked at my sister for a long, very still moment. You are uninviting me from your wedding. Do not be dramatic. I am being practical. When people ask what my sister does and I have to explain that she works in an industrial facility building pieces for satellites. I design them, I said. I design the navigation systems. There is a meaningful difference. See, this is exactly the problem. You are so defensive. Some careers are simply more presentable than others. Daniel is a lawyer. His brother is a cardiac surgeon. His sister is married to someone who runs a hospitality group. What am I supposed to say when they ask about you? I felt something shift inside me. Something cold and permanent, like a weight settling into its final position. You could say I am an aerospace engineer with a master's degree and 3 published research papers on orbital mechanics and satellite navigation. You could say I am leading the navigation team for the largest satellite constellation in this country's history. You could say I am actually quite good at what I do. Elena's expression hardened. You work in a warehouse and you are not married and you do not fit the image Daniel's family has certain expectations about. This is the most important day of my life. For once, can you please not make everything about you? She walked away before I could answer, her heels clicking all the way down the corridor and around the corner until the sound disappeared entirely. I stood alone in the marble hallway for a long moment. Then I took out my phone and sent a message to the only person I knew would understand it without explanation. Family dinner. Full catastrophe. Call me when you can. Dr. Maya Singh had been my university roommate for 4 years and my closest friend for 8. She had gone on to complete her doctorate in astrophysics while I had gone into industry, and we had maintained the kind of friendship that does not require regular contact to stay intact. She was the person who answered messages at midnight without needing context, and never once made me feel that my problems were not worth her time. I was halfway through a cup of tea in my apartment, the one I had bought 2 years ago with my first major bonus, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick that my parents had found deeply inappropriate as a real estate choice, when Maya called. Tell me everything, she said without preamble. I told her. The dinner, my father's dismissal, Elena's conversation in the corridor. Maya listened without interrupting, which is the rarest and most valuable quality in a person. She uninvited you from her own wedding, Maya said when I finished. Because you are an aerospace engineer. Because I work in a warehouse, apparently. You are designing systems that will provide internet connectivity to remote communities who have never had it. You are doing work that will genuinely change people's lives. And your family is embarrassed by it because it does not come with a corner office and a designer wardrobe. Ah, I know all of that. Are you okay? I thought about it honestly. I think I am done, I said. I have spent my entire life trying to get them to see me, to understand what I do and why it matters, and they simply never will. Elena is probably right. It would be easier for everyone if I just did not show up. Do not say that, Maya said firmly. Why should you keep showing up to be dismissed and minimized by people who are supposed to love you? If you want to skip the wedding, skip it. Send a gift. You do not owe them your presence when your presence costs you this much. We talked for another hour about work and the satellite project and everything except my family. When we finally said goodnight, I felt something I had not expected to feel. Lighter. As if naming the exhaustion out loud had removed some of its weight. I decided I would not go to the wedding. I would send something beautiful and impersonal and I would be busy that weekend, which would not even be untrue. The satellite project was entering its most technically demanding phase, and I had been working 80-hour weeks for the past 3 months. I turned off my lamp and lay in the dark of my apartment, looking at the city lights through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and I thought about what it would feel like to stop waiting for people to see you. Turned out it would feel something like relief. Have you ever been made to feel small by the people who were supposed to celebrate you the most? Drop a comment and tell me where you are listening from. I want to know how far this story has traveled. Stay with me, because 3 days after that family dinner, at 7 in the morning while I was reviewing telemetry data at my desk, my phone rang from an unknown number. And what happened next changed everything. Part 2 is coming, and I promise you it is worth waiting for. Welcome back. I hope you have got something warm to hold, because this part is where all the quiet preparation I did over 6 months either meant everything or meant nothing at all. The export validation system I had been building went live on a Monday morning at exactly 6:03, right on schedule. Every module I had updated behind the scenes, every custom clearance protocol, every data bridge between our internal systems and the federal customs network, it all clicked into place without a single error. No fanfare, no launch email, no meeting where someone else got to stand in front of a slide deck and take a bow. Just quiet, flawless execution running through the infrastructure of a company that was about to demonstrate it had no idea what it actually ran on. By 6:15, I had confirmed full system integrity and logged it. One master deployment record, digitally signed, backed up in triplicate before most of the office had finished making their first coffee. By 6:50, I had printed my offboarding memo. 5 pages, clinical and precise. Every completed validation cycle documented. Every module now live listed in order. A brief summary of residual oversight tasks that I, quite honestly, no longer had any investment in seeing through. I put the memo in a plain folder with a single sticky note on the front. Monica. No logo. No dramatic farewell. Just her name on a note and a folder sitting on her keyboard in a glass-walled office she would not enter until almost 8:30, because she never arrived before 8:30 unless there was an executive watching. I went back to my office. I opened my personal drawer. I took out the fireproof pouch, confirmed it was sealed, and placed it in its spot in the bottom drawer exactly where it had been for 3 months. Notarized contract inside. USB drive with the full deployment logs. Signed memo from our Chief Technology Officer dated 6 months prior, authorizing my private redundancy backups for emergency validation deployment. All of it indexed, countersigned, and printed on the same paper stock legal used for executive contracts. Then I slipped one final page into Monica's folder, tucked between the list of module completions and the closing line of the memo. 10 words in plain bold type centered on the page. Review Section 12C. I did not leave a phone number. I did not take the last sparkling water from the communal fridge. I just walked out. I want you to understand what I felt in that moment, because it was not the dramatic catharsis people expect from these stories. It was not anger or triumph or the satisfaction of watching something explode. It was quieter than that. It felt like setting down something very heavy that I had been carrying for so long I had stopped noticing the weight. Then I went home. I reheated leftovers. I watched bat television. And then my phone lit up with a motion alert from a security camera I had genuinely half forgotten about. I set it up 9 months earlier on the back corner of my secondary monitor, painted matte black, silent, hardwired to a personal cloud account that had no connection to company servers and no connection to my work email. Just in case. It was, as it turned out, exactly in case. The feed loaded. And there was Monica walking into my empty office like she owned it, which she did not, and like she had every right to do what she was doing, which she absolutely did not. She was not alone. The 2 compliance men from the quarterly audits were with her again, and they moved through my space with the nervous energy of people who have been told they are doing something justifiable and are not entirely convinced. One of them started pulling binders. The other photographed sticky notes. At one point, Monica held up a phone charger, an old one, tangled, probably from 2021, and asked the compliance man if he thought it had been used to export data. He just blinked. Ha ha. A phone charger. She held up a phone charger like it was evidence of international corporate espionage, and the man standing next to her looked like he was calculating how many vacation days he had left. They found nothing, of course. Not a rogue USB drive, not a misplaced client file, not a single breadcrumb that did not have my name, my authorization, and my timestamp on it. I had built the compliance framework for this company. I had also followed it perfectly on my way out. Everything I was entitled to take, I took. Everything that belonged to the company, I left. Clean, documented, and unremarkable. But Monica did not stop. She yanked drawers open with the energy of someone who was sure the scandal was just one layer deeper. She muttered to herself about unauthorized modules and covered tracks. And then she reached the bottom drawer. My bottom drawer. I was still standing barefoot in my kitchen, a slightly burnt piece of toast cooling on the counter, when I watched her grip the handle and pull. The fireproof pouch sat exactly where I had placed it. Black. Heavy. Sealed. one red sticker on the front that simply said confidential. I watched her pause. You could see it in her posture, that half second where something in her knew she was already too far into the wrong room. But her pride would not let her feet move backward. She unzipped the pouch. No gloves. No documentation. No legal witness, just her hands and the assumption that whatever was inside would justify everything she had already done. She pulled out the contents. My notarized employment contract. The USB drive with full deployment logs. The CTO's signed memo authorizing my private backup system. All of it indexed, dated, pristine, and completely undeniably mine. She held the contract page the way you hold something that has just burned you. Not dropping it but wanting to. The short compliance man tilted his head. What is that? He said. She did not answer. She flipped through the pages faster now, looking for the flaw, the missing signature. The one document that would not hold up. There was not one. She slowed when she reached the highlighted section. The pale blue ink of my marker over section 12C, paragraph 4. She read it. I know she read it because I watched the exact moment her expression stopped moving. The tall compliance man stepped forward and asked very quietly, did she authorize this search? Monica's eyes went to the door. She left the company, she said. This is company property. We do not need her authorization. The short man shifted. That depends on the contract language. Especially if there is a privacy or retaliation component. And there it was. The floor dropping. Not dramatically, not with noise. Just the quiet structural collapse of a plan that had never accounted for the possibility that I was prepared. She was still holding the contract when her hand started to shake. Section 12C was highlighted. The clause was clear. Any unwarranted search conducted without employee consent or documented probable cause, substantiated by recorded evidence, shall result in immediate dispersal of equity holdings, exit bonuses, and non-compete severance compensation. Binding. No internal arbitration. No appeal. She had walked into my office with 2 witnesses and no legal basis. She had searched my property without consent or documentation. She had opened a sealed personal item with no authorization. And the camera in the corner had recorded all of it in high definition. I was still barefoot in my kitchen. I clicked download on the footage. Labeled it. Clause activation Monica H. Final. Then I opened a new message to my attorney and typed 4 words. She triggered the clause. Take a breath. Seriously, just take 1 second. Because the moment that footage downloaded, 9 years of being underestimated, 9 years of fixing problems nobody credited me for, 9 years of silence, all of it was about to come due. In part 3, I walk you through the email that changed everything, the phone call I answered like I was picking up dry cleaning, and the moment Monica's entire professional world started going very, very quiet. Stay with me. My attorney does not drink coffee, does not use exclamation marks, does not believe in what he calls decorative language in professional correspondence. He is precise the way surgical instruments are precise, not because precision is beautiful, but because the alternative causes damage. The email I sent him went out at 7:02 the following morning. Subject line. Notice of clause activation. Section 12C. Employee Dana Reeves. 3 attachments. Nothing else. The first was a high-definition video file labeled Unauthorized Search, 12:31 p.m., Office 14B. The second was a PDF of my complete system deployment logs, digitally signed and hash-matched to the final module push timestamped at 6:03 a.m. the morning I left. Every line of work I had done for 9 years accounted for, authenticated, and completely irrefutable. The third was a scanned excerpt of my employment contract, Section 12C highlighted in sky blue, with the countersignatures from legal and the COO printed clearly in the margin. 3 files. That was all it took. By 8:30, I got a text from a former colleague. Girl, what did you do? HR is in a full breakdown. Monica is locked in a conference room with someone from legal. The head of HR looks like she has seen something she cannot unsee. I did not reply. I just made fresh coffee, opened the contract on my personal laptop, and read through Section 12C one more time. Not because I needed to, but because I wanted to feel it. I wanted to sit in the fact that this moment was not luck. It was not circumstance. It was built deliberately, one documented layer at a time, over 6 months of saying nothing while watching everything. The clause did not leave room for interpretation. Any employee subjected to an unwarranted or defamatory investigation, including unauthorized access to personal or professional property, substantiated by recorded evidence, shall be issued immediate full equity dispersal, exit compensation, and 6-month non-compete offset. Binding. No internal arbitration required. That last sentence. No internal arbitration required. That was the one that made me smile every single time I read it. Because arbitration was Monica's game. That was how people like her managed situations. You spin it into HR language, drag it through internal processes for weeks, exhaust the other person until the energy of fighting simply costs more than it's worth. You make the road so long and so tedious that most people just stop walking it. That was the playbook. I had watched it happen to others. But arbitration requires two parties who have not already settled the matter with a clause that says there will be no arbitration. By 10:15, a pending verification code appeared on my banking app. The wire had not landed yet, but the mechanism had been initiated. Someone at Meridian had triggered it. Quietly, reluctantly, with the energy of an organization calculating that the cost of paying me out was significantly lower than the cost of the alternative. They had run the numbers. They had looked at the footage. They had looked at the contract. And they had blinked. My attorney called that afternoon. For words. They are not contesting. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the blank space on my wall where a company recognition plaque had been hanging until the previous week. I had taken it down the morning I left. Not out of bitterness. Just because it seemed dishonest to leave behind something with my name on it in a building that had just decided it no longer needed what my name represented. The feeling in that moment was not joy. It was not the kind of satisfaction that arrives loudly. It was something cooler and cleaner, like finishing a very long piece of work and putting the pen down. Like knowing the machine you built is running exactly the way you designed it, even after you have left the room. They triggered the clause. Now they had to live with that. I gave them 24 hours. No pressure. No dramatic ultimatums. Just a single email the next morning, receipted, time-stamped, and completely bulletproof. Per Section 12C, the actions conducted on company premises on the date in question constitute breach of employee privacy and professional defamation, as defined in the original employment agreement. Please confirm wire transfer instructions by close of business. I sent it at 8:01. I watched the read receipt tick to green at 8:28. Then silence. Not the silence of a company ignoring you. The silence of a company that does not know what to say because there is genuinely nothing they can say that helps them. The kind of silence you only hear when someone in a boardroom has said the word lawsuit out loud, and everyone in the room suddenly needs water. At 2:43 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it ring twice, picked up. Dana Reeves speaking. A pause. Then a voice I recognized immediately, one that had always sounded to me like it belonged at a seminar full of people who were very confident about things they had read in airport bookshops. Hi Dana. It is Sandra Hollis from HR. She always said her full name and department, as if I might have forgotten who she was. As if she had not once borrowed my umbrella during a fire drill and never returned it. As if she had not docked my PTO for being 6 minutes late the month after I covered her compliance review single-handedly because she had a schedule conflict. We have reviewed the material you sent, she said, choosing every word carefully, walking through the conversation the way you walk through a room you suspect has a weak floor. And while we do not agree with all of the characterizations presented, we do recognize that some procedural irregularities may have occurred. Procedural irregularities. Weeping, not from me, from the English language being used like that by someone from HR. I said nothing. Let her keep going. We would like to explore a path forward that avoids further escalation, she said. Perhaps we can find a mutual understanding. A mutual understanding. Now they wanted understanding. Now, when the footage was downloaded and the clause was activated and the attorney had already made contact, now they wanted to explore paths and find mutual ground. I took a breath. Kept my voice completely flat. My understanding, I said, is written in your standard contract template. Section 12C. The version signed by your legal team and initialed by your chief operating officer. The one your department approved without reading it carefully enough. Silence on her end. You're sure you want to handle it this way, she asked. We could explore alternative solutions that don't involve. I cut her off cleanly. Don't involve what, Sandra? Evidence? Documentation? A binding clause your own people wrote and signed? Another silence. Longer this time. I am not negotiating, I said. I am collecting. I ended the call. No profanity. No raised voice. No dramatics of any kind. Just a closed circuit. Because this had stopped being about anger a long time ago. I was not angry anymore. Anger requires a level of uncertainty, a part of you that still wonders if you were wrong, if maybe you missed something, if maybe the other person had a point you overlooked. I had no uncertainty left. They fired the shot. I had just let gravity do the rest. I need you to sit with that phone call for a second, because Sandra Hall is calling me from HR to explore mutual understanding after they had torn through my office with 2 compliance men. That right there is what audacity looks like when it runs out of road. Part 4 is where the wire lands, where the numbers show up in the account, and where something happens in a conference room on the other side of the city that I genuinely could not have scripted if I had tried. You need to see this. For weeks later, I walked into the Meridian Professional Conference Center wearing a navy blazer I had bought the previous weekend, carrying a badge that said Dana Reeves, Director of Trade Compliance, Callaway Global. Not a consultant. Not an analyst. Director. Ha ha ha, it is amazing what a title change does to the volume of a room. I had not even reached the registration desk before my phone started buzzing with connection requests from people who had been connected to me on LinkedIn for 3 years and never once engaged with a single post. Whispers travel faster than memos in this industry. Meridian had buried what happened under a confidential resolution agreement, but the shape of it had gotten out. In trade compliance circles, which are smaller and more interconnected than most people realize, the story of a 9-year compliance architect walking out with a signed clause and time-stamped footage had become something close to legend. Nobody used my name publicly. Nobody had to. Callaway Global did not ask many questions during the hiring process. Their head of operations had seen the footage through proper channels through a reference verification process that my attorney had made very clean and very legal, and they understood immediately what it meant to have someone who could build a compliance system from the ground up and know precisely when and how to protect it. Their offer was decisive. Private office. Direct board meeting access. A signing bonus generous enough to ensure I would not be returning anyone's calls from competing firms for a long time. But the conference was its own thing entirely. Panel 2B. Hostile internal audits, chain of custody policy, and how outdated governance frameworks open the door to legal disaster. The moderator had sent panel materials in advance and I had read them twice on the plane. I was ready. The room was full. Trade compliance managers, customs liaisons, legal observers, all shifting in the particular way professionals shift, when they are seated in uncomfortable conference chairs, and expected to look engaged for 90 minutes. I scanned the room once out of habit, checked the exits, checked the front 2 rows. And there she was. Second row. Left side. Hair a little different, maybe cut shorter, maybe darker. Wearing a badge that listed her name and the word consultant below it. No company name. Just consultant, the badge category that in this industry often means the company you used to work for no longer exists in the form you left it, or the role you used to have no longer exists at all. Monica. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, she was the same height, same posture, but smaller in the way that people look when the scaffolding they built their confidence on has been quietly removed. She was looking at the panel materials in her lap with the focused intensity of someone who does not want to look up. I did not look away. I did not need to. When she finally glanced toward the panel table and found me, there was a single beat, half a second, where everything on her face went completely still. Then she looked back down at the conference packet. She did not look up again for a long time. The panel opened and we gave our introductions. I kept mine brief and factual. Then we moved into case studies, which was where the real work happened. I talked about documentation standards, third-party verification protocols, and the critical importance of separating personal assumptions from professional process before initiating any kind of internal review. I talked about it the way someone talks about a principle they believe in, because I do believe in it. I have always believed in it. The only difference is I also know what happens when that principle is violated by someone who thought belief was optional. Then the moderator moved to the final case study. He pulled up a slide. No company names. No individual names. Just bullet points, clean and clinical. Manager initiates unauthorized internal search. No prior employee consent obtained. No documented probable cause presented. Employee holds contract clause covering this precise scenario. Clause triggered by the search itself. Company issues six-figure payout within 30 days. Confidential resolution filed. The moderator looked at our panel. Lisa, he said, using the name I had given as my panel alias, would you walk us through what may have occurred here from a compliance standpoint? I leaned forward slightly. This is a textbook example, I said, of what happens when leadership confuses control with compliance. The moment a manager substitutes suspicion for documented procedure, they move from management into liability. You cannot walk into an employee's workspace without consent, without documentation, and without legal basis, and expect that no mechanism exists to respond to that action. I paused for exactly 1 second. And if the employee in question happens to be the person who built the compliance framework the company depends on, I added, I think the outcome speaks for itself. A few people in the audience laughed. The kind of laugh that recognizes something without quite being able to say it openly. Second row, left side, Monica did not move. Did not reach for her water. Did not shift her weight or cross her legs or do any of the small things people do when they are processing something comfortably. She just sat with the stillness of someone who is very carefully not reacting, because reacting would confirm what her stillness was already confirming. She heard every word. She knew exactly what case study we were discussing. And she sat in that room and listened to the professional consequence of her own decision being described to an audience of 200 peers, in a panel on which I was a featured expert, at a conference where I had arrived with a new title and a letter of appointment from one of the most respected logistics firms in the region. I did not smile during the panel. I did not look at her directly for more than the one glance at the start. I did not need to make it personal because it had already moved past personal. This was just the natural completion of a sequence that she had set in motion the day she brought me a lukewarm coffee and told me to stay useful. After the panel, people came to the table with questions, business cards, conversations about framework design and audit defense strategy. I answered everything calmly, professionally, with the kind of patience you develop when you have spent 9 years being the person who actually knows how the machine works. Monica left before the room cleared. I watched her go from the corner of my eye, badge flipped over, shoulders at that specific angle that people carry when they are moving through a space they no longer feel they deserve to be in. I hope she found something good on the other side of it. I genuinely do. Not because what she did was acceptable, but because holding the opposite of that hope costs energy I stopped having any interest in spending. The conference ended at 4. I took a car to the hotel, ordered room service, and sat by the window watching the city do what cities do in the early evening, lights coming on floor by floor, streets filling up and then thinning out, the whole ordinary rhythm of a world that had kept moving while my situation resolved itself exactly as I had designed it to resolve. My phone sat on the nightstand. I had not checked my personal account since the morning. I checked it now. I know what you want. You want the number. You want to know what the clause actually paid out. You want to know where I was when it landed and what it felt like when it did. Part 5 is the end of this story, and I promise you it is worth the wait. 2 months to the day. That is how long it took from the moment Monica unzipped that fireproof pouch in my empty office to the moment the final wire transfer notification appeared on my phone screen. I was sitting in a small cafe across the street from Callaway Global's downtown office. Black coffee, no distractions. Morning light coming in at that particular angle that makes everything look like it is right on the edge of something good. I had been at the new role for 3 weeks. My private office had a window that faced east and a door I was allowed to close without anyone asking why. Small things. Enormous things. The notification came through at 9:47. I looked at it for a long moment before I opened it. The total, broken into its 3 components, was listed in the kind of clean formatting that banks use when they want the transaction to look unremarkable on paper no matter what it actually represents. Pending equity balance. Performance bonuses accrued over 9 years, never fully released. Non-compete offset per contract clause. All of it cleared in a single wire. I am not going to tell you the number made me gasp or made me cry or made me feel the way winning looks in films. It was not like that. The number was significant. It was more than fair. It was, frankly, exactly what 9 years of being the invisible architecture of a company's legal survival was worth, minus the interest on the patience I had spent carrying it quietly. What it actually felt like was quieter than any of that. It felt like the moment after you have been holding a door open for a very long time, holding it against the wind, holding it for people who walk through without looking back, and you finally just let go. The door closes. The wind stops. And you realize your arm was tired in ways you had stopped noticing because you had been holding on for so long. That was what the wire felt like. Not triumph. Just release. I finished my coffee, put the phone face down on the table, sat with the morning for a minute. Then I picked up my bag and walked across the street to the office. Because the work was still interesting. It had always been interesting. The systems, the frameworks, the puzzle of making something function smoothly when the variables are constantly shifting. Monica never understood that. She thought what I did was a stepping stone, something you managed and delegated and eventually automated away. She never understood that the reason I stayed for 9 years was not that I had no other options. It was that I genuinely cared about the architecture of the thing. Calloway understood that. On my third day, the head of operations sat across from me and said, "We do not need you to explain yourself here. We just need you to build what you build." And then she left me alone to build it. That sentence, that one sentence was worth more than any clause. As for Monica, she vanished in the way that people vanish when the professional community is smaller than they realized and the consequences of a documented compliance breach are longer than a single job cycle. No apology. No email. Not even a viewed profile notification from a secondary account. Just gone the way things go when the weight of them becomes too much to carry into new spaces. I did not need the apology. I want to say that clearly, not because I am performing grace but because it is genuinely true. I had the footage. I had the freeze-frame image of her face in the exact moment she read Section 12C and understood what she had done. I had that moment permanently saved, and it was the only closure I needed. She came into my office looking for evidence of my guilt. What she found instead was evidence of her own. She tore through everything I had built looking for something shameful. Every document she touched was signed with my name, authorized with my credentials, and time-stamped with my hours. There was nothing hidden. There was nothing stolen. There was just 9 years of work organized, preserved, and waiting. She thought she was catching a thief. She handed me 6 figures and a front-row seat to her own professional conclusion instead. And I want to say one more thing before I close this out because it is the part that matters most. The part that I think some of you already know in your gut but maybe needed to hear said plainly. I did not plan the clause because I was bitter. I did not build the vault because I was angry. I documented everything because I had learned slowly over years, through watching how institutions treat the people who make them work, that the people who build quietly are the ones most likely to be discarded quietly. And if you are the kind of person who builds quietly, you have to also be the kind of person who protects what you build. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Not in a way that gives the people looking for a reason to dismiss you exactly the ammunition they are hoping for. But methodically, consistently, and with enough faith in your own competence to know that when the moment comes, the evidence will speak for itself. Tell me in the comments. Have you ever been underestimated at work by someone who did not understand what they were actually working with? Have you ever been the invisible person holding the whole thing together while someone else collected the credit? Have you ever wanted to say something in a meeting and chosen instead to write it down and wait? And if you have dealt with something like this, share your story. You are not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground, protecting your work, and reclaiming your life from the people who thought your silence meant surrender. Because silence is not always surrender. Sometimes silence is just a very long, very deliberate, very carefully documented setup. Monica walked into my office on a Tuesday with 2 compliance men and a theory. She left having triggered a contract clause she never read on camera she never knew existed, in a building I no longer worked in but whose system still ran on code I had written. The most dangerous person in any room is rarely the loudest one. It is the one who already knows how the room is wired. I finished my coffee that morning in the cafe, and walked into a building where someone held the door open for me, and said good morning like it was a fact rather than a formality. I sat down at my desk, opened my project files and got back to work. Because the work was always the point. Everything else was just gravity finding its level. And it found it. Right on schedule. Right to the penny. Right on the dot.